Here are 3 perfect beginner layouts that you should know in order to produce rotors, stators, and motors. Say that 3 times. The first layout will produce 20 stators per minute, and it takes in 90 iron ore per minute, 90 coal per minute, and 80 copper per minute, and the whole thing only needs 140 megawatts of power to function. Start with a 10 by 9 platform. In the second row, starting in the second column, we are going to put down 2 foundries, making sure that the outputs are coming in from the bottom. We put a double manifold splitter line in the first row behind the foundries. They both have their inputs coming in from the left-hand side, and there's Mark 1 belts between all the splitters and the foundries. For the output, we just put a merger in front of the first foundry with its output going to the left-hand side. And we set both of them to be doing steel ingots. Next, still in the second row, starting in the 5th column, we are going to add 3 smelters. In the first row behind those smelters, we will add 2 splitters behind the first 2 smelters. The first splitter has its input coming in from the bottom, and the other one has its input coming in from the left-hand side. And we belt everything in the back here with Mark 1 belts. For the output, we'll add 2 mergers to the last 2 smelters, with both their outputs facing to the right. And we use Mark 1 belts for the entire output right here. Then we set all the smelters to be doing copper ingots, but we make sure to underclock the last one to 66.6667% in order to only do 20 per minute. Next, in the 5th row, we are going to add 3 constructors, and in the 4th row, we'll add a splitter in the 1st and 2nd column. The first splitter will have its input coming in from the bottom, and the other one will have its input coming in from the left-hand side. For the output, we'll add 2 mergers in front of the first 2 constructors, and both of those will have their outputs facing to the left-hand side. We can use Mark 1 belts for all the belts over here. Then we set all the constructors to be doing steel pipes. Next to the steel pipe constructors, we are going to add a total of 6 wire constructors. In the 4th row, we'll add a splitter behind every constructor except for the first one, with all their inputs coming in from the right-hand side, except for the very last one. That one should have its input coming in from the bottom. All belts can be Mark 1 in the back, except for this last one between the last 2 splitters. This should be a Mark 2 belt. For the outputs, we'll add a merger in front of all the constructors with their outputs facing to the right. Except for the very last one, that one's output should be facing forward. We could set all the belts to be Mark 1 except for the last 3 belts of the manifold right here. These 2 should be Mark 2 belts, and the very last one should be Mark 3 belt. We set all of the constructors to be doing wires, except for the very first wire constructor. This one should be underclocked to 33.333% in order to only do 10 per minute. Next, starting at the beginning of the 8th row, we are going to add a total of 4 assemblers. We'll start in the 2nd column, and we'll add one for every other column for a total of 4 assemblers. We'll have a double manifold line. The top one will be going to the right with all the splitters input coming in from the left-hand side. And all the bottom manifolds should be coming in from the right-hand side going to the left. So the splitters should have its inputs coming in from the right-hand side. All the belts at the top manifold can be Mark 1, but on the bottom we need them to be Mark 2 between the last 3 assemblers. We'll add a Mark 3 belt between the merger of the wires and the splitter of the assemblers. From the steel pipe merger right here, we'll add a Mark 1 belt heading into that conveyor lift. For the outputs, we'll just add a merger in front of all of the assemblers except for the last one. And then we'll belt everything up with Mark 1 belts. We'll set all of the assemblers to be doing stators. The second layout, it will be taking in 225 iron ore per minute, and it will be producing 20 rotors per minute. It does require the cast screws alternate recipes for screws, but only requires 170 megawatts of power to run. Start with a 9x13 platform. In the second row, starting in the first column, we are going to add a total of 9 smelters. In the first row, we will add a splitter behind all the smelters except for the very last one. And all their inputs should be coming in from the left-hand side. We'll want to add a Mark III belt between the first 5 splitters. The next 2 belts should be Mark II belts, and then the rest can all be Mark I belts. For the output, we'll add a merger in front of the first 4 smelters and the last 3 smelters. The first merger should have its output going forward, and the next 3 should have its output going to the left-hand side. We'll connect all of the first 5 smelters together with mostly Mark I belts, except for the first 2 belts between the first 3 splitters. They should be Mark II belts. For the last 3 mergers, they should all have their outputs going to the right-hand side. We'll connect all the last 4 smelters with Mark I belts, except for the very last belt between the last 2 mergers. That should be a Mark II belt. We'll set all these smelters to be doing iron ingots. Except for the first one, that one should be underclocked to 16.6667%. in order to only do 5 per minute. And the very last one, that one should be underclocked to 33.333% in order to produce 10 per minute. In the 5th row, we are going to add a total of 10 constructors for the cast screws. And in the 4th row, behind all the constructors, except for the very last one, we'll add a splitter. The first splitter should have its input coming in from the bottom, and all the other splitters should have their inputs coming in from the left-hand side. Add a Mark II belt between the first 6 splitters. Then we'll add a Mark III belt between the first merger in the 3rd row and the splitter in the 4th row. We'll set all of these to be doing the alternate recipe for screws called cast screws. In the 12th column, between the 7th and 1st row, we are going to add a total of 7 constructors. In the 11th column, we'll add a splitter to the left of all the constructors, except for the very last one here in the 7th row. That one, we won't add one. All of those splitters should have their inputs coming in from the bottom. And the first 2 belts in that splitter manifold should be Mark II belts. All the other belts can be Mark I belts. For the output, we'll add a merger in front of all the constructors with their output facing forward. We'll make sure that the last 2 belts between the last 3 mergers are Mark II belts. All the other belts can be Mark I. We'll set all these constructors to be doing iron rods, except for the very last one in the 7th row. That one should be underclocked to 66.6667% in order to only do 10 per minute. At the beginning of the 7th row, we'll make sure to add 5 assemblers. We make sure to line up the first input of the assembler with the constructor that is in the first column of the 5th row. And we'll repeat the process for every second constructor. So the second assembler's first input will be lined up with the 3rd constructor. The 3rd assembler's first input should be lined up with the 5th constructor, etc. In the 6th row, we'll add a merger with their outputs going forward towards the assembler. We'll add Mark I belts between the 2 constructors that is below the assembler. And we'll make sure to add a Mark II belt between the merger and that assembler. For the top splitter manifold line right here, we just add splitters with their inputs coming in from the right-hand side and Mark I belts between all the splitters except for the very last 2 assembler splitters right here. This belt should be a Mark II belt. We want to repeat the process for all of the constructors and the assemblers. So for every 2 constructors goes into the merger. We'll add a conveyor lift, making sure that the input of the bottom is facing to the top right here. And then we'll rotate the top to line up with this splitter right here. We want to make sure that the output is the green arrows right here. Then we'll add a Mark II belt between the conveyor lift and that splitter. We'll grab a Mark II belt and belt from this merger to this conveyor lift right here. For the outputs, we'll just add a merger in front of the 3 middle assemblers. The first merger should have its output going to the right. The second one should have its output going forward. The third assembler should have its output going to the left-hand side. And we set all the assemblers to be doing rotors. For the simple last layout, we just need to pass in the 20 rotors and the 20 stators per minute we are producing in the first 2 layouts, and then this will be producing 20 motors per minute. Start with a 4x5 platform. Starting at the beginning of row 2, we are going to add 2 assemblers. The first one should be in the second column, and the second one should be in the 4th column. We'll add a double manifold line in the first row. The bottom one should have its input coming in from the left-hand side, and the top one should have its input coming in from the right-hand side. For the outputs, we just want to add a merger and then belt both of them into this merger. All the belts can be Mark I belts. We set both assemblers to be doing motors. Then all you have to do is belt the rotors into one side and the stator into the other side that we did earlier. And then the last thing we'll want to do here is to set a storage container and belt the merger into the storage container just like this. I'd like to thank all my Patreons and my Discord supporters.